Hi everybody, I'm Poppy.
I'm Ditto.
And I'm Serena, and this is the Witch's Brew.
We don't have a
Uh,
lemon today. No. Poor lemon.
No. And a lot of technical issues.
Oh
yeah,
So
yeah.
this should be interesting.
yeah,
You guys,
too many.
it's for our viewers at home, it's currently 12:50 a.m. and this is our third
Yeah.
time recording this.
Yeah, third time's the charm, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You
Uh,
say that, and then my video connection disconnects.
that is true. That is true. All right. So today's topic was you're talking about the three brothers in the Deathly Hallows. So I kind of wanted to start with, or I guess we kind of wanted to start with a reading of the tale of the three brothers from Tales of Beetle the Bard. So here we go. There were once three brothers who were traveling along a lonely, winding road at twilight. In time, the brothers reached a river too deep to wade through and too dangerous to swim across. However, these brothers were learned in the magical arts, so they simply waved their wands and made a bridge appear across the water. They were halfway across it when they found their path blocked by a hooded figure, and Death spoke to them. He was angry that he had been cheated out of three new victims, for travelers usually drowned in the river. But Death was cunning. He pretended to congratulate the three brothers upon their magic, and said that each of them earned a prize for having been clever enough to evade him. So the oldest brother, who was a combative man, asked for a wand more powerful than any in existence, a wand that must always win duels for its owner, a wand worthy of a wizard who had conquered death. So Death crossed to an elder tree on the banks of the river, fashioned a wand from a branch that hung there, and gave it to the oldest brother. Then the second brother, who was an arrogant man, decided that he wanted to humiliate Death still further. He asked for the power to recall others from death. So Death picked up a stone from the riverbank and gave it to the second brother, and told him that the stone would have the power to bring back the dead. And then Death asked the third and youngest brother what he would like. The youngest brother was the humblest and also the wisest of the brothers. He did not trust Death, so he asked for something that would enable him to go forth from that place without being followed by Death. And Death, most unwillingly, handed over his own invisibility cloak. Then Death stood aside and allowed the three brothers to continue on their way. They did so, and walked with the wonder and adventure that they had been on, admiring Death's gifts. In due course, the brothers separated, each for their own destination. The first brother traveled on for a week or more, reaching a distant village. He sought out a fellow wizard with whom he had a quarrel. Naturally, with the other one as his weapon, he could not fail to win the duel that followed. Leaving his enemy dead upon the floor, the eldest brother proceeded to an inn, where he boasted loudly of the powerful wand he had snatched from Death himself and how it made him invincible. That very night, another wizard crept upon the oldest brother as he lay, wine-sodden, upon his bed. The thief took the wand and, for good measure, slit the older brother's throat. And so Death took the first brother for his own. Meanwhile, the second brother journeyed to his own home, where he lived alone. Here he took out the stone that had the power to recall the dead, and turned it thrice in his hand. To his amazement and delight, the figure of the girl he had once hoped to marry before her untimely death appeared before him once more. Yet she was silent and cold, separated from him as though by a veil. Though she had returned to the mortal world, she did not truly belong there, and suffered. Finally, the second brother, driven mad with hopeless longing, killed himself so as to truly join her. And so Death took the second brother for his own. But, thought Death as he searched for the third brother for many years, he was never able to find him. It was only when he had attained a great age that the youngest brother finally took off the cloak of invisibility and gave it to his son, and then greeted Death as an old friend, and went with him gladly and as equals departed this life.
Well done.
So there's your story,
One of the best stories in Harry Potter, in my
right?
opinion.
Um, so we see one search for power, one search for love,
The
one
other to
search.
just be left the hell alone.
Right, yeah. One search for saving, for
Yeah,
Ireland.
yeah.
Um, but either way, So what are your guys' thoughts on that? I have quite a few, but I'd like to hear yours first.
Serena, you can go first if you would like.
I don't want to jump straight to like Harry Potter, well, modern times. Really like the last book, but with it's 1 a.m. I'm very tongue tied right now.
You're fine.
That's fine.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, that's very true.
That is true. Um,
I feel like as
I don't know what
we,
to say.
as we mentioned in our previous recording that our lovely viewers will not hear, because that was a mess.
That was a mess and a half.
Yeah.
We were kind of chatting on the topic of like connecting each of these brothers to a character in the film slash books, which I brought up. So I feel like that might be a good place to start with this. I will tell you my opinions, and then we can kind of sprout out from there if you guys are cool with that.
That's all right.
That's fine. Go ahead, Poppy.
Okay, cool. So as for, I'm going to flip to the right page so I can figure out where I am in this book. So as for the oldest brother who asked for the wand more powerful than any in existence, as connecting this to a book character, I kind of low key connected. Wow, words. Connected this to Draco Malfoy a little bit because his search for power and like with his who his family is, like it's they kind of already have power, but in a different sense. Not in the sense of like winning every single duel that they, have per se, but just their family name is known for power. You guys understand what I'm saying here? Trying not to
Yeah.
sound like an idiot. um yeah, so I feel like that's something that I would connect to, his just personality, excuse me, his personality in general and just who he is as a person. Like it's not like that he wants power, but like his ego.
The need to hold up his family's name.
Yeah, and that's kind of
for power.
why I chose that character to connect with the oldest brother. Do you guys have any other opinions on the first brother before I move on to the second?
Not that I can think of.
Well, I know that like this is really like well known by like the Harry Potter community, but a lot of people have already like established like um who attributes to the three brothers. And I know I'm 99% sure you two also know this, but like Voldemort died for power,
Mm-hmm.
Snape died for love, and Harry greeted death like an old friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that
Oh,
my opinions are a little different, but continue.
well, I'm just saying that's like what the community as a whole kind of kind of like agrees with.
And it's the generally accepted metric.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it's the generally accepted like that's where the three brothers line up. But I do see like Draco could be like a character embodiment of the first brother. Like like a lot of people are gonna have like their own different opinions with everything.
And please, tell us in the comments. Would much appreciate what you guys think about this whole idea.
Well, I think the community based assumptions may be drawn to the objects themselves rather than the brothers. Because I mean,
Yeah,
humans are
that
obviously much more complex than like a single object. So we have.
Mhm.
I guess you can. I mean, you can't draw it without the brothers parallel because you can't
Mhm.
say the resurrection stone is love and
Right.
the invisibility cloak is treating death as an old friend and the elder wand is power. But you can, or at least the elder wand, say, oh hey, that's definitely Voldemort's object because he is that. I want all of the power in the world. I want to murder everyone. Just let me do it. Come on, just let me do it. Let me have it. So he's kind of just like that. Let me just take all of this power that I can possibly hold to that.
But
And
you
then
guys
of
can
course,
see where I'm coming from with Draco and like having
yeah,
that aspect of it.
yeah, that he has. I guess
Yeah.
you can also probably make because there's so many different assumptions you can make about the characters too. Is the thing is that Draco is that kind of resident dickhead. I guess is an interesting way to put it. Is that he's kind of just this kid that has all of this power and doesn't want to see it go away, so he wants to keep that power.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't think he necessarily. I actually no, I think that's wrong. I was about to say I don't think he'd necessarily die for power, but no, he definitely would. And so would his father. Um, because they would be too headstrong to believe that they weren't strong enough to take on the enemy that killed them.
I
So
feel like
they
that's
would,
a fair argument as well. Yeah.
yeah, just that they were
Mhm.
they're headstrong enough to believe that they could conquer any enemy, but they really aren't. And so that kind of thing. And then the same thing with Voldemort is that he kind of was taken down by an enemy he thought he could conquer, and so too with the first brother, who thought he was invincible, and then was murdered like a Muggle. I mean, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
The
Well, then
irony.
he comes in. Then
Yeah.
comes in what
Seriously, the
happened,
irony in that whole thing is funny.
right? Well, then comes the whole thing. It's like, what if Harry just pulled out a Glock and shot Voldemort?
I mean, seriously.
Right? Like, Muggle weapons are Muggle weapons for a reason. They're
Yeah.
effective. We're horrible to each other,
Effective.
but they're effective.
Very effective.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure as like wizards progressed, if they were ever to like try and take over the Muggle world, they'd have to like produce spells to fight against bullets. Because for
Yes.
some reason, I feel like Protego wouldn't necessarily make the cut.
Yeah, probably not.
Because I think that's typically a magical barrier instead of a physical barrier. I guess they could probably conjure up a wall, maybe.
Ekio wall.
Yeah, just like the three brothers conjured the rocks across the pond,
Yeah.
just a little more solid, and hope that the bullet's not fast enough to penetrate through the wall. There's limitations to everything. You're
Yes.
not stopping at 50 BMG. That's all I'm saying.
Why is this the movie we never got, but I desperately want to see?
Right? There's probably a no. Um there's definitely like a short cut of them in the graveyard where Harry just pulls out a Glock and shoots Voldemort.
Oh, I certainly freaking hope so.
Like there's definitely like a short that like depicts that. Just Harry whipping out a Glock and just going, bah!
Okay, so we're gonna continue.
Off topic, but
Yeah,
tangent.
now that
But
we spent 10 minutes talking about that. Um, so the second brother, I'm gonna kind of reread what Ditta read a little earlier. Then the second brother, who was an arrogant man, decided that he wanted to humiliate death even further, and asked for the power to recall others from death. Um, so I want to kind of jump into this a little bit, and my opinion on just the resurrection stone as a thing, and not necessarily the arrogant brother. Um, I think could be portrayed. Wow, it's one in the morning. Leave me alone. Could be portrayed as Neville, because like I don't
interesting.
I don't know if this is gonna make any sense, but I'm trying to think of it. how I'm gonna say it so it makes sense. Because I feel like, with Neville, yeah, Harry's parents were murdered, like, in front of him, obviously. But, like, Neville's parents were tortured. Wow, Poppy. Jesus Christ, your words. But, like, his parents were tortured in, like, horrific fashion, if you will. And so I feel like I'm not gonna say aura because that sounds weird. His, like, power, quote unquote, is like, if he could bring people back from death, like, those would be obviously the two people he would bring back from death. You guys see what I'm trying to get at here? I hope I make kind of somewhat sense with this, where I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
you're
then,
making sense.
yeah.
Okay.
And
I
as
don't sound like a dumbass for once. It's fine.
well, and as I kind of brought up earlier, is that they have kind of a half existence too, where it's very similar to, you know, Cadmus's lost lover, is that they're there, but they're not like all there.
But they're not there.
They're separated by a haze of what is essentially broken mind, basically. Instead of a veil, like the death veil from Order of the Phoenix, it's kind of their minds are very, very broken just in the first place.
And I also want to kind of touch on the subject with in the first book, I think it's mentioned, and maybe you guys know where I'm going with this, but maybe not. The mirror that Harry finds. Somebody please say that for me, because I always have a hard time saying that.
Mirror Verised?
Yeah, that thing. Thank you. Is where, like, I don't know if they mentioned it in the movie or in the book, but, in my mind, when I see Neville kind of step in front of the mirror, like, to look in it, like, I picture he sees what Harry saw, but with his parents standing on either side of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than likely.
Because, like, that would just be, it's a sad feeling to think, like, yeah,
that's
Harry's
his desire. He wants his family back.
Yeah, and that's the same with Harry, but it's different for Neville. Because Harry kind of has people left, and, like, all Neville has left is his gran, which, that's kind of sweet, but, like, growing up, like, with your grandparents is different than growing up with having parents. And, like, that whole, like, you don't have, like, either you have, like, a grandma or grandpa, or you have just, like, in Neville's case, you have just his grandma who's raising him and, like, taking care of him. So, like, having that, aspect of, like, only having one quote unquote parent taking care of you, you're gonna have kind of a different view on things than if you were having both parents take care of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little bit. I mean, probably doesn't help that it's not his actual parents either.
Right. So now for the youngest brother, with his cloak of invisibility. I think this one's obvious, but that's just me. It's Harry, obviously, because he already has the cloak. I can't remember if it was gifted to him or if he found it.
It was gifted by Dumbledore in the first book at Christmas.
Okay, thank you.
With a note that I believe read, "Your father left this in my possession. I think you'll find."
Only give me 10 seconds to find said book.
Serena goes over to her massive Harry Potter book collection.
You think I'm lying?
But yeah, obviously it's
Where's
Harry.
Christmas in the
because he had the cloak and like he used it to evade multiple things. The closest.
Of course, Christmas doesn't have its own separate chapter, which makes it easy to find.
I found it.
Oh, I found it. I found it.
Good job, guys.
Page 202.
I don't have my book near me. Oh wait, yes I do.
As we all just pull out the Harry Potter series.
Mine's on my bedside.
I mean, what kind of Potterhead will we be if you didn't just like have it at hand?
Oh, I found it. There we go.
Okay, so the note reads, "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is timed. It was returned to you. Use it well." And then it was signed, "A very Merry Christmas to you."
Yeah.
Use it well. Break every school rule.
Right?
Yeah, basically.
Basically, do what James.
Don't do what your father did, but use it wisely.
Or don't. Your choice.
Yeah, or don't.
Yeah, or don't.
But I think, as we kind of mentioned in our previous recording, him using it to get around the Gringotts Blank. Oh my god.
Gringotts Bank.
Thank you. It's 1 a.m, okay? My I've been at work all day. My brain does not want to cooperate.
That is fair.
But yeah, with him using it to get around the Gringotts Bank and like get around all of like, first of all, get around a freaking dragon. Let's bring that up for a second because I consider that BS because there's no way a dragon could not be able to smell you through the freaking cloak of invisibility, whatever. And 2, dragons have like supremely good eyesight compared to like any other mythical creature, I think. But
does he use the invisibility cloak to sneak past?
I don't think so.
Did
They use the ringers.
I may be talking out my ass here.
I'm doing the motion to no one. It's the it's the end-to-end cowbell thing.
Yeah, the classically conditioned blind.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm
Yeah,
talking out my
the
ass here.
classically
Sorry, guys.
conditioned blind.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know what it's called.
I
Give me
forget
10
the dragon
seconds.
name.
I don't fucking know. It's fine. Give me 10 seconds. What book was it from?
The last
The
one.
last one?
What's the last one?
The
Deathly Hallows.
I'm like, it's either the Deathly Hallows or the Half-Blood Prince. Both of them had Horcruxes in it. I don't fucking know.
That's a move.
Am I wrong though?
No, you were very, very right.
You guys can keep talking while I look at this.
How fast can
While I
Serena
figure this
find
out.
it?
Probably not very fast.
Yeah, so I just that's my opinion on like the brothers and like what character is like connected with each of those things, in their lives or like in their personalities. Given that the arrogant brother does not define Neville at all. But the other ones I think are pretty close to the characters in the movie/book series of Harry Potter. So
The ones that actually acquired the object.
yeah, correct.
Kind of weird how that works, right?
A little bit.
Rolling.
Serena, are you still trying to find that?
Yeah, I'm scanning it. I'm scanning the books. I'm scanning the book. It's fine.
But yeah, that's an interesting quiz. I mean, obviously those are two very obvious ones, and then the typical community, based one is Snape is the one that died for love, so he's the second brother. Voldemort's obviously the first, and then Harry stays in the same place, being the third brother. kind of helps that he's the youngest, so it literally goes in order.
Yeah.
Because Voldemort's older than Snape, and Snape's older than Harry, obviously. So, there's
I still feel
kind
like,
of three brothers.
even with that, like what we've kind of talked about, like I still feel like there could be controversy with either like my way of thinking or like with the community way of thinking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you can always argue one way or another whether or not you're right or wrong.
Right, and there's always room to debate about this. I for sure want to hear other people's views on this, just to see what other people think of it, in general.
Right. Yeah.
Do you guys agree with the opinions of the community, or do you have your own opinions of what you guys think the three brothers aspect is?
I mean, I'm not a horrible. I'm not too into just, like, connecting characters to individual objects. I don't really like that kind of aspect because I mean, it makes sense and it's fine, but like I just don't. There's nothing. There's nothing there. It's kind of cute and symbolic that like Snape is the one that died for love, but he really kind of did, but he didn't, and you know, there's. I'm not even gonna bring up the Snape debate because that's a whole rabbit hole that
If
we're
you
not
want to
even.
hear that, go listen to the first episode.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
You
Whether or
shouldn't
not
be
Snape
listening to this
actually
one.
deserves
Go
what he
listen to
got.
the first one.
But it's kind of a rabbit hole that you don't really want to jump down, but you definitely should jump down sometime because it's a great time. But
Yes. Go listen to the first episode if you haven't already. Not that we're totally plugging our own podcast into here.
You know what? That's fine. I mean, it's called the Great Snape Debate for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's all laid out in there. You'll know our opinions after that one. But
yeah, for sure. We all have very strong opinions on that whole thing.
Of course.
I found what they're called, and they're not unique at all.
Yeah, what are they? Just ringers?
They're called clankers.
Clankers.
No, there we go.
There you go. See? Clankers. And they also do make a
really
clanking sound. Clank. But
I should have known that.
right? Well, ringers, clankers. I mean,
the word and just went really rolling. Really? You could have come up with so many cool names to call it, but no. You
have clankers.
I guess clankers is better than ringers.
That's true.
That is true. But still.
I'm also not surprised that none of us remembered that because that's one word.
Clinkers.
Right, because it's one insignificant word in the entirety of a series containing. I don't know how many words are in the Harry Potter series.
That's a great question. I actually don't know.
Google.
You're gonna whoever you guys are gonna be able to hear the
1,084,000.
84,170.
Jesus, that's a lot of words.
So a lot.
And clanker is just one of those words.
So 1 out of 1 million words.
Yeah, basically.
That's not surprising that none of us remember what it was called.
Yeah. I just love Ditto's comment of what kind of Harry Potter fans would we be if we didn't have the books right beside us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what kind of Harry Potter fans would we be?
I mean,
basically,
granted,
we're
book,
away from our lifeblood here. I mean, it's like
is only by my bed because I haven't finished reading it yet. Because I'm rereading the series again, thanks to Lemon.
Well, as I was talking about,
I used to read Percy Jackson, which I haven't started reading yet.
Yeah, I was talking
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I was talking to Serena earlier, and I was like, I'm basically just a repository of Harry Potter lore. Like, when in doubt, just get me talking about Harry Potter, because I'll talk about something for like days.
I mean, welcome to the podcast. This is what we're doing. We talk about Harry Potter for half an hour.
If you just get me thinking about something, I'll come up with something eventually. Just get me started, you'll be fine.
Probably.
It's
So
great. So, did you have before I went on my little tangent of connecting Harry Potter characters and whatnot, did you have another point you wanted to add to this conversation?
I did,
Let's
and I
go
had
for
it in the first recording, but I completely forgot what it was.
it.
So
Thank God. Nobody is going to ever hear that first recording except
I
for
mean,
us.
I guess we can listen to it and then like copy and paste what I said in there into the
Major
that's
editing skills.
that was the whole lead into this whole thing. So then we just like completely break the secretarial in that.
Eh,
So um
we still,
I don't know. I guess
still feel like this is a good direction
oh
that we headed
I
in.
was talking about the base lore base of
Yeah,
the three objects. That's what
that
I was
sounds
doing.
right.
So we have I'm forgetting his name again. Of course, why wouldn't I do that? Um, Come on. So I'm of the personal belief, and I think most people are of the belief that the Parable Brothers are the three brothers in that story, and that they didn't just meet God or meet death. Like it's not God, but a god of sorts. They didn't just meet death on a pathway. They actually produced the objects that they created or that they used, and that are now known as the Deathly Hallows, that make one the master of death. Which is kind of a funny thing because you can murder some dude, bring him back with the resurrection stone, and then hide under your cloak so he can't come back and murder you. So
Genius.
there's essentially the gist of the Master of Death. There is that you can murder somebody, talk to them after they're dead, and then hide yourself from themselves. So we have Antioch, which is the oldest brother who created. Thank you.
And Ignatus. I don't know how to pronounce the last one.
That's fine. So we have Antioch, the oldest brother, who created the Elder Wand. Basically, he wanted a wand that would never fail to fulfill the wishes of its owner. So for him, that was I wanted to go kick some ass, take some names, and make it look cool. We have Cadmus, who I personally believe looked for the Resurrection Stone in order to talk to the girl in the story, not to humiliate death, but to go and to be like, I loved this woman. She died of some mysterious circumstances. I would like to go talk to this girl again. So he made
That's
that
really
stone.
sweet.
Right, yeah, like a cute little story.
Honestly.
So he made the stone, realized that it was like talking to her through a veil, and then decided that it was no way for either him or her to live in the mortal world. So he offed himself and went on to go and be with her forever.
If I remember, I think he hung himself.
I don't know. I think
Story in the movie it's depicted that he hung himself.
Yeah,
but in the story it's never explicitly said.
Yeah, because there was the whole animated sequence in the movie where he kind of we just saw his corpse hanging from the ceiling.
That's an amazing sequence, by the way. It's like my
yeah.
favorite sequence in all of Harry Potter.
It's definitely one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie.
No, it's beautiful. And then we have Ignatus, who I think it's kind of difficult to come up with a reason to want the invisibility cloak. But my main reasoning is I think so. Dumbledore mentions that he can hide himself regardless with magic. He can make himself invisible, really no matter what. But the thing with like spells casted on a user and stuff like that is that they're not very. I mean, they're powerful, but they're not necessarily infallible, basically.
Right.
So you can likely still detect the person underneath that spell and just like kind of find them and murder them. But the entire thing with the invisibility cloak is that it's unsummonable and it's free of it like other enchantments. So you can't enchant it, you can't detect the person underneath it, anything like that. So basically runs the user entirely, not just invisible, but basically takes them out of the equation. It's kind of, I guess we can talk about transfiguration, what happens when things are banished. They go into non-being.
Yeah.
Essentially. So anything under the invisibility cloak goes into non-being. It just ceases to exist. to any like outside entity or spell.
Serena, did you say you wanted to jump in? I kind of missed you. Your voice.
To this.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I have to relook at the story, but didn't it say that he the reason he wanted the cloak was to hide from death himself?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's why he wanted the invisibility cloak, just because because I think he was scared of being like taken before his time.
Like the other ones.
Yeah, like because he saw how the other ones, because he saw how his older two brothers ended up dying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the reason he hid under it. That's the reason why he wanted it. Was because if he knew that his brothers were going to go down the paths that they did, then he would want to hide from death to, again, essentially greet death like an old friend when he reaches a great age, when he's done with his time. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think a big problem with this story is that we're kind of assuming that they produced all of these objects at the same time.
Well, yeah, because
But
that's how the sequence is in the movie as well.
Right, yeah, they kind of just made all these objects at the same time, and they kind of gathered these objects at the same time. But I feel like that maybe going along with that is that maybe they followed in each other's footsteps. So Antioch, being the oldest, became the most powerful first, and he had that knowledge base first. So he produced that Elder Wand and then went and got himself offed. And then Cadmus next came to power, having lost a loved one, went immediately and tried to produce a stone that would bring her back to him. When he succeeded in that, but not to the way he wanted to, he went and offed himself. And then Ignatus, seeing that both of his brothers are now dead because of these powerful objects that they decided to create to solve their problems, not having any problems except the fear of death, hid himself from death.
Yes. That's kind of better words than how I was trying to say.
Good job, Ditto.
Yay! So, yeah, is that we're
Can
kind
I
of
also mention in our book on the last page, that gorgeous art at the bottom? Like,
oh yeah,
that's so pretty. Like,
Oh,
J.K. Rowling, can you make a coloring book, please? I would love that as a coloring page. Anyway, off topic.
Right. Well, that's the gravestone that I'm assuming they saw in Maldor's Hollow.
I believe it is the grave they saw, yeah. Or something close to it, anyway.
Yeah, at least an artist's rendition of a grave.
It's so pretty, and I'm just like,
Well, you could potentially scan it and then like enlarge it. And then
oh,
color
that's true. That would be fun.
So there you go. There's an idea.
Anyway, off topic. Sorry.
But it's alright.
This whole podcast is just us going off topic.
I mean, of course. I mean, Lemon's not here to keep us in track, so
yes.
Right. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of just lore and stuff behind the Deathly Hallows that all of the different.
I want to go watch that scene now.
Right, depending upon how you kind of interpret each of the individual parts.
Yeah, I also just think it's an interesting story to include. When they're talking about that whole aspect of like the Deathly Hallows and like.
Mm-hmm.
And the symbol, let's talk about that because I feel like that's important to mention in this story. So the symbol, for those of you who don't follow Harry Potter, unlike the rest of us on this podcast.
Come on, man, what are you doing?
Yeah, right? Get together.
You'll be fine.
So the symbol is a triangle, an overarching triangle, and then in the center is a circle made to represent the resurrection stone, and then going through the middle of the circle, so splitting the circle and the triangle in half, is the elder wand. And obviously the triangle is meant to be the cloak of invisibility. So just thought I would bring that up. For a quick
My
minute.
my biggest question is that in the books it's mentioned as I believe Grindelwald's symbol from Durmstrang. Crumb calls it that or refers to it as that, but I want to know where that originated. Did that
Where
originate from Grindelwald, or
the
is that
symbol?
from somewhere before his time?
Are you talking about the symbol
Yes,
originality?
yes.
I said the
'Cause
word
I know
correctly
that
the
it was
first time.
carved into Ignatus's grave
Hmm.
and stuff like that, but like I did that come from Grindelwald just being clever and going, oh hey, look at this, and then he got that associated with the Deathly Hallows because he searched his entire life for those objects to try and become the master of death in his own way? Or is that from further in lore when it was initially created, the story? It was just here's the three brothers, here's the three objects that they had. So here's the invisibility cloak, nested within it would be the resurrection stone, and the nested between both of those is the elder wand. So where did that originate? You know,
I think that's
is
a
that
great point, honestly,
right?
to bring up.
Like when did that come into the fold?
That's I like that idea of like trying to think where it came from. I don't think it's ever mentioned in any of the books or, stuff that I looked at anyway.
I don't think it is because I don't think it's horribly important to the overall like story.
But we would
I mean,
like
it
to
obviously isn't.
know.
The origins of a symbol of something else of greater original value, is not very important.
But we would still like to know, J.K. Rowling.
That is true. I mean, it could be on Pottermore, but
I wouldn't
I
bet
wouldn't
on
think
it.
she would. I don't think she would think to include something like that.
No,
Like
and
in,
like I think again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think at the end of the oh my god, I can't remember what movie it is. Jesus Christ. At the end of the seventh movie,
mm-hmm.
do do
Part one or part
they?
two.
See?
Yeah, thank you. Do they show Is it the end of the seventh movie? Is it the end of the Deathly Hallows Part One? I don't remember. But one of those movies, one of those end movies, they show Dumbledore's grave.
I believe that was
Is that Part One?
the end of part one into part two. I think
Okay, that's
it
I
was
thought.
either it was at the beginning or the end of one of the two.
Yeah, I knew my parts were
I think
confused.
it was the end of part one. It was the end of part one because the starting of part two was at Shell Cottage.
Oh, yep, you're right. Okay. So, I think on Dumbledore's grave is that symbol as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
I think. And then
I don't think we're ever given like an overshot view of his.
Yeah,
really?
I want to say that it was.
To Google. I'm gonna
Yeah,
look at it right
it's
now.
literally we just see like side shots.
Come on, Jamie. Or wow.
Yeah, it just looks like side shots.
Now my
Good
name
job,
is out
Happy.
there. Shut up.
I
I
mean, it's a
wonder
new granite block,
how many people will catch that.
but yeah, it
Um,
doesn't look like the symbols carved on it. I don't necessarily think that Dumbledore would want that broadcast either.
I'm looking at it because I'm just me and
Yeah,
I do.
Dumbledore is a very like secretive person.
Yeah, he kind of wanted the power of the wand to die with him.
That's true.
But it
So,
did.
but it didn't. Hopefully, it dies with Harry. Although it almost didn't if you follow the cursed
Harry
child,
snapped it in half.
right?
Yeah.
And then yeeted it off the edge of the thing.
Okay.
And I'm kind of sad that he kind of didn't keep it, to be completely honest.
I mean, I can see why he didn't because holy hell, that's a lot of power.
Right, but what happens if he breaks his wand again? Right? Like,
He never fixed his wand to begin with in the movie.
he did.
With
Oh
it.
yeah, you guys
Not
are
with
right.
it.
The symbol's not on there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
he fixed it at least in the book. In the movie, I don't
Yeah,
think
in
he.
the book he did.
Yeah, it didn't
movie
specifically
he
show him
didn't.
fixing. I think it's just kind of assumed that he did in the movie because it wasn't really. I mean, they took a lot of creative liberty with that kind of thing. I mean, you kind of have to because like, would you really want to pay extra money to see Harry repair the wands with the wands in the movie? I mean, I guess it could have been done spectacularly because I guess it was described in the book that it shot off sparks and was like super happy with itself. Like, yay, I'm back, woohoo!
I found it funny at the end of that movie how like I'm assuming we're talking about the end of Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
In that, I found it funny how like the reactions of Ron and Hermione. Like every time I see that, they're just like, "What are you doing?" He's like,
You
what does it
idiot!
look like I'm doing? I'm destroying this thing.
Yeah, it's really funny.
You just gave up your all power. Yeah, and
And I care why exactly.
right?
Knowing
Makes sense.
Harry, that is definitely what he said back.
Oh, certainly.
Be like, and I care why?
Yeah.
This power has corrupted everybody who has had this wand. I don't want that.
Yeah, basically. I mean, if it wasn't gonna corrupt anybody, it'd be Harry.
Right.
And it like half corrupted Dumbledore because he kind of believed that he was all, but he really wasn't, obviously. But
Well, yeah.
you know, he was pretty damn strong.
Yeah, even without the wand, he was pretty damn strong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course.
I mean, being the headmaster of Hogwarts, I guess you kind of have to be pretty damn strong.
I don't know though. I feel like Phineas is kind of a pussy. I'm gonna be honest. Phineas Magellan, the black that made it to, or the
Oh,
cousin
yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
black that
Yeah,
made
yeah,
it to headmaster. I feel like he's kind of a pussy.
yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can
Like I feel like a
definitely see
2-year-old would beat him in a fight. You know what I mean?
You're probably right. You're probably right.
I don't think it necessarily has to be that you're all powerful to be a headmaster of like Hogwarts or anything. Because like obviously, I mean obviously if that was kind of the precedent, then you wouldn't necessarily have like Madame Maxime, who isn't altered, is
Yeah.
part giant, um, of Bobatons or Karkaroff of you know Durmstrang, because like not necessarily the most powerful beings in their little environment. So kind of I think it was just kind of the I think headmasters are more on merit rather.
And that also jumps to the point of like, given that Umbridge wasn't headmaster for very long, but what do we?
We started.
Yeah, we're
I
getting
mean
into this right now in this episode.
that's true. I guess it does take a lot of balls to rule over a bunch of unruly kids.
At all
And
of our high school
Not Voldemort.
and
Dumbledore kind of does
college
it
teachers.
by lording over his power. I'm sure Madame Maxime does it with respect, and Karkaroff does it with fear.
Yes.
So they all kind of have their own little methods of controlling. Because like Dumbledore comes with that mythical power, right? This is a guy that like would kick your ass without breaking a single sweat. Is like all of his like underlings kind of fear him, but not like completely fear him.
Yeah.
And then we have Karkaroff, who I feel like probably just like lords over his Death Eatership, just like I was trained by Voldemort himself. Fear me. Blah, 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 blah.
It's like, no, I don't want to fear you. No thanks.
Right. And then
I
Madame
like
Maxime in the
What?
French way.
I like how we all just agree that like Hogwarts is it's not like overruly with Dumbledore. Madame Maxine is kind of like you were like you could be friends with her, but you respect her. And then Karkaroff's just dictatorship.
Yeah, basically.
I mean,
Like
yeah, you can see their like personalities, I guess. Would that be the correct word?
Answer for Goblet of Fire.
Yeah,
This,
that's what I was getting at. But yeah, you can see like with the school's entrances, like how that those kind of personalities work together in how they rule, quote unquote.
Yeah,
You know?
we got a big boat. That's cool. We got
Yeah.
the comfy trailer.
Oh, that's a cult.
Well, in the book, it's like in the lake, right? So it's a boat in the lake.
Yeah.
So like, and I think it's described as being pretty cool because I think they describe in the book Crumb arising from like the lake, like naked in the
Mhm.
middle of fucking winter.
Probably. I mean, it's Crumb.
Right. But like, is there anything more
Pushover.
Russian than that?
That's
Just
the
like,
most
oh, the
Russian
water's
thing I've
cold,
heard, actually.
right?
Again, it's also Crumb.
Right.
True.
That's true.
Any opportunity to come out of that lake half naked.
Yeah.
Pushover.
But like, it's kind of the the warm, cushy. Here we're all friends here, basically. The the cold, kind of mean.
Overruling.
I can't. I'm blanking on the word that I want to use, but it's along those same lines. And then we have Hogwarts, which is kind of a mix of the two, where like the common rooms are nice and cushy, and just nice. They're warm. They're livable. And then you have the rest of the school, which kind of gets cold and drafty because it's a castle. Castle. Um, but you have this environment that just like fosters semi unruly kids that are all under this guy that would totally beat the shit out of each and every one of them if given the opportunity. But he doesn't.
Mhm.
He shows that restraint and shows that he is this powerful dude, but he's not gonna take shit.
Mhm.
So, how do
He
you
rules.
think that, like, obviously this is kind of going off of what we said, but, like, how do you think that those certain personalities and, like, how do you think Umbridge has a personality over Hogwarts? Do you think it's kind of like a dictatorship, like you said with, what's his name?
Igor Karkaroff.
Thank you, Kokoroff. I can't think today. Leave me alone.
That's,
Um, it's almost 2 in the morning. We've been recording for a long time.
yeah.
um, how do you think that like Umbridge fits in the like personalities that we've talked about?
Well,
I feel like she fits into both categories.
So both categories meaning Kokoroff and Madame
Maxine.
Maxine. Thank you. Wow.
yeah. I think
If you were because if you were part of the was it Inquisitor Squad, whatever the fuck she called it.
yeah. I think that's exactly that.
Like if you were part of that, you lived like this cushy kind of like no one can touch me. Like you live this like cushy lifestyle. But like if you were against her, you got like the Karkaroff kind of like dictatorship.
My take on that was that she's a mix of the two, where she has Madame Maxine's respect, which she obviously doesn't, but she would use Karkaroff's fear to get that respect, essentially. So if she hadn't come in the way that she had, in like this mischievous, not really mischievous, but like if it was a different time, she would use the fear of like retribution to gain respect for herself, and then raise herself above that so that everybody below her feared and respected her, basically.
Yeah, even like when Umbridge did that, when she like messed with Professor Trelawney. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not even saying that right, but it's fine. I don't care. Like she exhibited that power
Mm-hmm.
like you were talking about. Ditto. Jesus.
Yeah, I think she tried to use that like that little like power rush of firing Trelawney. I think she tried to use that to turn that around to gain respect from the students
Mm-hmm.
or to steer the students into respecting her. Then that
Spoiler
just
alert,
back.
it didn't work.
Right. Well, I think that was more of a that was a fear play because I think
Mhm.
the thing with the professors at Hogwarts is that everybody saw that there was some flaws with some. So like Professor Binns being literally a ghost. Um,
Yeah.
they kind of nobody kind of liked him, but like if he got sacked, there would be an uprising kind of thing. Is that there's this whole like thing behind it where they all love and respect the teachers at Hogwarts. Just period.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah,
question,
like
they may not enjoy classes with them, but they spend their
mhm.
year with that teacher. So they're going to know that teacher, they're going to respect that teacher, they're going to love that teacher because they're with them. And there is kind of that,
Yeah.
Umbridge was kind of the upsetter of that balance, basically. Is that she's the troublemaker in that group. So they all kind of just hated Umbridge because she's the odd man out, basically, not defending her. She's a bitch. May forever burn in hell. But, it's kind of the usurper, essentially. And literally everybody except for the people that saw that they could get power from helping her out were against her. So that inquisitorial squad, the Slytherins, basically.
Yeah, pretty much all of Slytherin House.
Power, yes, this is right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like this is a good segue into kind of like the Slytherin House in general, and like cause we've kind of touched on this a little bit, I think, in the Great Snape debate. Like we said, go watch it if you haven't already. You'll know where we stand on this thing. Um, but do you guys think that all Slytherins who make it into that house or who are selected into that house, do you think they are all bad?
so I had a pretty big discussion about this a while back. Is that Slytherins are meant to be cunning. They're not necessarily bad, but they're meant to use whatever is available at the time to them to basically get to where they want to be. So, we see essentially the worst of the Slytherins for the Inquisition, Bulstrode, um, Crab, and Goyle
Mm,
are four just in the thing, but they're all Malfoy's little you know buddy.
Goonies.
Yeah, they're all his goonies. So
posse members, if you will.
goons posse. Ah, there you go. That was what I was looking for. Posse. Like the rest of the Slytherin house wouldn't necessarily do that because they're kind of still nice people. They're just kind of they don't see that opportunity as a way to get where they want to be. Because Malfoy saw the power and he just took it. But the rest of Slytherin's like, I don't really need that. I kind of want to go and be an Auror or whatever. But they're just tending to be more cunning rather than brash, such as the Gryffindors.
Yeah, and there's also the
Yeah,
topic to
and I
talk
think
about of like, sorry, go ahead.
the it's fine. No, because I think in the books or in the movies or something, it said that like even some Slytherins decided to join Dumbledore's army.
Hmm.
So that kind of like leads to the fact that like they're cunning. They're looking for basically any ways to like achieve their ends. Which some people saw like Malfoy's Goonies siding with Umbridge, and other people saw kind of revolting and taking their own little path.
And I feel like it's also important to mention like with the Slytherin house, and again, we've talked about this in our first episode. That's why you should go listen to it. Totally not plugging our own podcast. But there's the point of like how the different houses view Slytherin house as well. So like how Hufflepuffs view Slytherin house, how Gryffindor, well, obviously Gryffindor views Slytherin as rivals because obviously that's what they are. And like I think it's also important just to like see how the other houses view a other specific house that is kind of like we said, like they're smart, but they'll also kind of do anything to make sure anything goes their way and not, go in favor of the other people. Again, go listen to the first episode. You will know how we feel about this.
So that's the whole thing.
Yes, that's a whole thing.
That's the whole thing. All right. So I think before we get too horribly off topic, because we are kind of branching off topic because it's 2 a.m. at this point.
Yeah.
I think we kind of just end it here.
Yes, we're all
Maybe
very tired. It's currently almost 2 a.m. as we record this.
I think we can pick this conversation up at a later date.
Yes.
So
stay tuned
this
for
might
that
be a great
episode.
truth, this might not. I guess we'll find out. But thank
As
you guys for
always,
listening.
I am Poppy.
I'm Ditto.
She's Serena, but you can't hear her. And this is the Witch's.
Oh,
there we go. There she is. Let's try this again, shall we? I am Poppy.
Sorry.
I'm Ditto.
And I am Serena. And as always, this is the Witch's Brew.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. And stay tuned for next week's. Bye!